I was standing just a few feet away when the teller looked my son dead in the eyes and said, "Sorry, you're not eligible to open an account here." Daniel hesitated. "I have my ID, my school letter, my proof of address." The woman didn't even blink. She gave that fake customer service smile, the kind that hides disgust, and said, "We reserve the right to decline service. It's policy." But I saw the real reason. The way her eyes scanned him. Young, black, dressed modestly, maybe too nervous to project wealth. She didn't see a future engineer or a client. She saw a problem to dismiss. I stepped forward. "Is there a problem here?" The manager, middle-aged, smug. "Too much." Cologne walked over and looked straight past me. "He doesn't meet the criteria for an account at this branch," he said. Then, almost under his breath, "We have to protect the integrity of our clientele." My son, my own son, made to feel small, lesser, like he wasn't worth a place in a damn lobby I helped pay for. They didn't know who I was, didn't recognize me without the suit, didn't realize I was the man who quietly bought out their parent company 3 years ago. I didn't know I had the power to make a phone call and end careers. But in 7 minutes, they were about to learn. I wasn't always the man with the corner office. I didn't come from wealth, didn't grow up in boardrooms. I grew up in a one-bedroom apartment in the south side of Chicago, 4 of us kids sleeping in one room. My mom working night shifts, cleaning banks, just like the one that humiliated my son. Funny. Right. Back then, I used to wait up just to walk her home from the bus stop. She never let us see her cry. But I remember the nights her hands shook while holding the keys. I promised myself something before I turned 13. One day, I'll buy the places that look down on people like us. I never chased money for the sake of it. I chased security, dignity, leverage. I studied finance, built my first business at 25, failed, rebuilt again at 27. By 35, I had enough capital to start quietly acquiring distressed commercial assets. One of them, a mid-sized holding company with regional banking branches. The same one that owns this bank, but I never advertised it. I didn't need a plaque. I didn't need to be recognized. I believed power meant being able to change things without needing attention. I wore hoodies, not tailored suits. I walked in shadows, because that's where people show their truth. My son, Daniel, was my pride. Bright, kind, never arrogant. He got a full ride to MIT, majoring in mechanical engineering with a minor in AI. He's the kind of young man who thanks waiters by name and helps strangers pick up drop change. He didn't grow up how I did. He grew up safe, loved, surrounded by books and jazz and family dinners. I built that world for him, shielded him from how ugly the world could be. But that morning in that bank lobby, he learned the truth I hoped he never would. That some people don't care who you are, only what they assume when they look at you. He stood there, diploma in hand, future in his eyes, and was treated like a threat, like a burden, like he didn't belong. And in that moment, the man I used to be woke up inside me again. The quiet kid who used to walk his mother home. The boy who swore he'd flip the power dynamic one day. They didn't recognize me at that counter, but they were about to feel exactly who I was. The moment should have been simple. A father taking his son to open his first bank account. A small step toward independence. Adulthood. We even joked about it in the car. Don't forget to sign where it says, account holder. Future CEO. He laughed. Yeah, I'll remember. Gotta start somewhere. Right. But by the time we stepped through those glass doors, the air had already shifted. I knew the branch. Quiet. Polished. designed to cater to high-net-worth clients, their words. Not mine. I used to visit here once a quarter, unannounced, just to see how the staff behaved. Not once had they recognized me. Not once had I corrected them. Today, I walked in with Daniel, no suit, no tie, no assistant. Just a dad in casual clothes and a proud son with paperwork in hand. He walked to the counter, smiling. Hi, I'd like to open a checking account. Please. The teller didn't smile back. She looked him up and down, glanced at the forms, and asked, "Do you have proof of income?" He nodded. "Not yet, but I have this." He pulled out the scholarship letter from MIT. "I'll be interning at Lockheed this summer. I start next month." She raised an eyebrow. "We require active income for new accounts." He blinked. "Even student ones. No exceptions." She said flatly. I stepped closer. "Is there a problem here?" She didn't answer me. She turned to the manager, a man in his 40s, all fake charm and tight smiles. He sauntered over like he was doing us a favor. He took one look at Daniel and said, "Unfortunately, we can't proceed. He doesn't meet the profile." I asked, "What profile is that?" "Exactly." He smirked. "We reserve discretion for clientele that reflect the bank's long-term image." There it was. Polished racism. Respectable exclusion. Coded language to humiliate someone without ever raising your voice. I looked at my son. His smile was gone. Shoulders tense. Eyes darting. That bright, hopeful look he walked in with disappeared. That hurt more than anything. He whispered, "Let's just go, Dad." But I didn't move. I stood there while the manager gave me a look that said, People never learn where you don't belong." That's when I pulled out my phone, opened a secure channel I never used in public, typed 5 words to my general counsel. "Activate incident review. Branch 17. I didn't need to raise my voice. Didn't need to make a scene. I just needed them to keep talking. Because every second they spoke, they were burying themselves. I didn't storm out. Didn't yell. Didn't announce who I was or what I owned. Because I've learned something powerful in life. When you speak too soon, you let people off the hook. When you stay quiet, they show you everything. So I stood there, calm, watching. The manager turned his back and walked away, muttering something to the teller. She laughed that brittle, smug kind of laugh people think you don't hear when they think you're beneath them. Daniel looked at me like he was embarrassed of himself, like he had failed some invisible test of manhood. I didn't say much in the car. He sat quietly, staring out the window. Every now and then, I'd catch him wiping at his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. It wasn't just about the bank account. It was about the message they gave him. You're not enough. Not here. Not for us. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my office and pulled up the security footage from the branch. I watched it. From the moment we entered, to the exact second they dismissed him. I replayed the manager's smug smile. The way the teller slid Daniel's paperwork aside like it was trash. I took notes. Then I called Human Resources quietly and asked for the personnel files for Branch 17. I asked for hiring patterns, complaints filed, transfer history, diversity training records, turnover rate in the past 5 years. By the end of the night, I had a PDF on my desktop titled Institutional Bias, Preliminary Findings Branch 17. And it was damning. They had passed over every black candidate who applied internally for promotion. Every single one. Multiple customers had filed unresolved complaints related to discrimination. None escalated. And the manager, he was friends with the regional VP's golf buddy. Never earned that position. Just inherited it. I could have fired them all on the spot. But that would have let them leave as victims. No. I wanted them to feel the weight of their own decisions. I wanted them to experience, for the first time, what it felt like to be judged before you speak, to be told you're not the right fit. So I waited. For 7 days. I said nothing. I let the branch function. Let them laugh. Let them feel safe. And while they sipped lattes and dismissed the next Daniel who walked in, I was building the truth behind their smiles. I've always believed the loudest man in the room is rarely the one in charge. That's why I never wore name brand suits. Never plastered my photo in the corporate press releases. Never corrected people when they assumed I was just another guy. Because real power doesn't need to explain itself. 3 years ago, I acquired a controlling interest in a mid-sized investment group. They owned commercial real estate, retail credit platforms, and quietly 6 regional banks, including the one that tried to humiliate my son. The purchase wasn't glamorous. No headlines. No press. Just quiet contract, clean transitions, and immediate changes to corporate policy, especially around ethics, hiring equity, and community reinvestment. But the truth is, change doesn't always trickle down fast enough. Some people, like the manager at Branch 17, survive because they think nobody important is watching. I was watching, behind the scenes. I sat on the parent company's board. I had final review authority over all executive promotions. I chaired the quarterly ethics committee. And more importantly, I controlled the discretionary fund that underwrote bonus pools for regional leaders. The people in that branch thought I was just some dad with a hoodie and a tired look in his eyes. They didn't see the spreadsheets on my desk. Didn't see the signature line on their funding. Didn't know that every 2 weeks. Their direct deposits came from a corporate account I greenlit. They thought they were untouchable. But they weren't just touchable, they were traceable. I knew where the manager sent his kids to school. I knew the teller's promotion had been flagged twice for behavioral reports. I knew the assistant branch lead had quietly approved dozens of red flag denials for customers with non-traditional appearances. They'd been operating like this for years, because no one had ever pulled the curtain back. Well, I was about to rip it off the rails. This wasn't just about my son anymore. This was about every person they ever belittled. Every young black man they talked down to. Every single mother they denied loans to. Every elder immigrant they ignored while smiling at someone else. They didn't think I mattered. But soon, I'd walk into their world, not as a client, but as the one person in the company who could erase them, not just from payroll, but from the policy that allowed them to exist. I didn't need revenge. I needed truth. Cold, objective, documented truth. So for 2 weeks, I watched silently, strategically, no shouting, no confrontation, just data. I started with the footage. My security access allowed me to request high-resolution audio logs from Branch 17. I reviewed every customer interaction, listened to which voices got cheerful greetings, and which ones got the cold shoulder, watched who was waved into private rooms, and who was told to come back with more documentation. There was a pattern, subtle, but clear. If you were young, black, dressed urban, or had an accent, you got pushback, extra forms, delays, sometimes outright denial. But it wasn't just who they rejected. It was how they rejected them. The tone, the impatience, the little smirks they thought no one would notice. Then I dug deeper. I cross-referenced customer service surveys with internal case closures. There were dozens of unresolved complaints, marked incomplete, many with the same phrases. Dismissive tone. Unexplained denial. Felt unwelcome. One was from a woman who said she had $40, zero in savings, but was treated like a criminal when she tried to deposit cash. Her complaint: ignored. I reached out to her personally, then to 5 more who had similar experiences. Then to a former employee, a black woman who had worked there for 18 months before quitting without notice. She told me, I couldn't take it anymore. They didn't even hide the way they talked about customers. If you didn't look like their idea of money, you were just a problem? I asked if she'd be willing to give a statement. She said, hell yes. One by one. I compiled a report. Not emotional, not angry, just facts. Screenshots, recordings, policy violations, historical data, first-hand accounts, all cross-checked, time-stamped, and collated by legal standards. I even tracked their financials. That branch underperformed for 3 years straight. High turnover, low growth, but protected by political favors and internal connections. That was about to end. I sent the 87-page report to 3 places. The CEO of the holding company, our internal audit team, myself with a copy prepped for media release if they tried to bury it. And then I made one final call to compliance. Short, direct, chilling. Activate full-level audit of branch 17. No warning. No shielding. I want the truth made visible. They didn't know it yet, but the ground under their feet had already shifted. By the time they looked up, they'd be standing in quicksand of their own making. It happened on a Monday morning. The kind of Monday where everyone thinks it's just another start to another normal week. The manager was in his usual seat talking loud, sipping coffee, flashing that same smug smile to the young white couple. He just walked into his office. I walked through the door at 9:02 a.m. No hoodie this time. Just a dark tailored suit and a leather portfolio in my hand. He didn't recognize me at first. He gave that fake customer service nod. Can I help you? I smiled. Oh, I think you already did. Then 2 people walked in behind me, one from corporate legal, one from compliance. Suits, badges, clipboards, and silence. The manager's face changed instantly. The color drained from it. I handed him an envelope. You're being placed on immediate administrative leave, pending investigation into discriminatory practices, ethics violations, and misconduct. He looked at me. W, what is this? I looked him in the eye flat. Direct. It's called accountability. You've been overdrawing on privilege for years. Today, the account closed. The teller who had dismissed my son, she tried to slip away, but compliance caught her name and handed her a separate envelope. 2 more investigators entered from the side. One for internal systems, one for customer service audit. They began pulling footage, printing interaction logs, freezing account activity. Clients started looking up from their chairs. People stared, and I didn't flinch. I wanted them to see. I asked the assistant branch manager to gather the full team in the conference room. 10 minutes later, I stood at the head of the table with a screen behind me and every employee seated in silence. I clicked once. Slide 1. Customer complaint map. Red dots equals unresolved discrimination reports. It looked like chickenpox across branch 17. Slide 2. Audio transcript. Teller 004 speaking to 19-year-old black male. Line highlighted. Some people just aren't right for this place. Slide 3. Internal chat log, managers Slack messages about undesirables. Timestamp it. Unfiltered. Ugly. No one said a word. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I just let the evidence speak. When the last slide ended, I said only this. This branch didn't just fail its clients. It failed its own humanity. Starting today, that changes. Then I walked out. No applause. No confrontation. Just silence. But as I passed through the lobby, I saw Daniel standing near the door. He hadn't known I'd be there. Hadn't known I was behind any of it. And when our eyes met, he didn't say a word. He just nodded, the kind of nod men give each other when they finally understand the fight wasn't about pride. It was about dignity. By the end of the week, Branch 17 was no longer on the company's internal map. It had been reclassified as inactive under reconstruction. But for the people inside, reconstruction wasn't an option. What came next wasn't damage control, it was demolition. The manager, the man who said my son didn't fit the profile, fired. For cause, his severance was revoked. The internal investigation found 3 prior complaints that he never disclosed. One of them involved a disabled veteran. Another, a single mother, denied a mortgage despite a perfect credit score. He tried to lawyer up, claimed he was being made a scapegoat. Then we showed him the Slack logs, the audio recordings, the internal policy violations he personally signed off on. He walked out of that final hearing without a reference, without a paycheck, and with a permanent ethics flag on his employment record. He'll never work in banking again. The teller, suspended pending review, then terminated when video showed her repeatedly skipping over minority clients in line, even marking them as no-shows to pad service metrics. One customer, a Latina business owner, had been marked unresponsive 3 times in a month. She was sitting in the waiting room every time. I personally called her to apologize, but I didn't stop there. The assistant branch manager was demoted and reassigned to a probationary mentorship under one of our most respected regional directors, a black woman he used to mock in emails. The internal HR officer, reprimanded and reassigned after failing to escalate multiple client discrimination complaints. Even the regional VP, the one who recommended the manager as a favor to his golf buddy, was removed from his position and quietly exited with a 1-year non-compete and a mandatory DEI retraining if he wanted any hope of returning to the company. What they didn't understand until it was too late was this. I didn't want revenge. I wanted repair. Not just to punish them, but to rebuild a culture they thought they could quietly rot. And that culture began with accountability. We launched a public audit initiative, published our findings, and invited affected clients to participate in restorative sessions. No PR spin, no cute campaign slogans, just hard truths, laid bare, and a company that finally admitted it had looked the other way too long. But the most powerful moment, 1 week after the exposure, I got an envelope from our compliance team. Inside was a single printed form. Account opening request, Daniel M. Lewis. I walked into the new interim branch setup, Saturday with my son, and this time, they didn't question his credentials. They offered him 3 account types, called him sir, and when they asked, "Do you want to add a co-signer?" he said, "No, I think I'm ready to stand on my own." I just smiled, because the branch may have been rebuilt from the ground up. But my son, he never needed rebuilding. He just needed to see what power looks like when it's quiet but unshakable. In the months that followed, something remarkable happened. What began as a quiet act of accountability turned into a movement inside the company, not because I demanded it, but because people had seen what happens when silence is broken by action. We launched a full review of all 120 branches, every hiring record, every complaint, every customer interaction over the last 5 years. Some people resigned. Some were removed. But more importantly, we promoted the right people, the ones who had stayed ethical in systems that rewarded silence. And Daniel, he didn't just open his account. He started asking questions about finance, about how systems are built to keep people out, about equity, leverage, trust. We spent nights talking about how money works, not just the math, but the power behind it. A month later, he came to me and said, "I don't want to just be an engineer. I want to build things that open doors for others." I told him, that's the real legacy. Not the buildings, not the branches, but the doors you kick open for people behind you. He started a side project, a nonprofit financial literacy program for high school students in underserved neighborhoods. He named it Level Account. And he launched the first workshop in the exact same zip code where that bank branch used to stand. Meanwhile, inside the company, I quietly established a $10 million fund for internal advancement targeted at rising staff from historically marginalized communities. No PR, no press release, just progress. And I made a rule. Every executive, including me, had to spend 1 full day per quarter working at a retail branch. No titles, no assistants, just face-to-face with the people we serve. You'd be surprised what people say when they think you're just another man behind the counter. And maybe that's the point. Because real redemption doesn't come from vengeance. It comes from changing the very room where the harm happened and making sure that next time someone like my son walks in, they're not greeted with suspicion. They're greeted with opportunity. Not because of who their father is, but because we finally fixed a system broken long before he ever walked through those doors. I didn't walk into that bank to make a scene. I walked in to remind people of something they forgot. That dignity doesn't have a dress code, and power doesn't always walk in wearing a tie. They thought they were judging a kid trying to open a checking account. What they were really doing was revealing themselves to me, to him, and eventually, to the entire system they thought would always protect them. What they didn't understand is this. Real revenge isn't about shouting. It's about becoming the reason things don't stay the same. I didn't need them to remember my name, but I hope they never forget the silence that came when the truth arrived. Because the truth doesn't knock. It just walks in and waits for you to notice that the room feels different now. And as for my son, he learned something that day that I never wanted him to learn that way. That this world won't always welcome you. But that doesn't mean you stop walking in. It means you build your own door. Then hold it open for everyone they tried to keep out. So if you've ever been turned away, mocked, ignored, dismissed, don't waste your energy proving them wrong. Use your silence. Use your smarts. Use your scars. And when the moment comes, don't knock. Own the building.